Today's topic of discussion, video marketing on a budget. So cost-effective tips for small and medium-sized brands. So while we're waiting for a few more people to join in this morning, I'll just go through the key talking points for this morning's discussion. If at any time you'd like to raise a question or anything like that, there's no chat function on LinkedIn audio events, unfortunately, but you can raise your hand down the bottom near the React button, and I can bring you up onto what's called the stage, and you can ask a question that way. Alternatively, just send me through a DM and I'll be sure to answer it that way too. So the talking points for this morning. First and foremost, I think it's important to distinguish between being budget or being cheap. So budget doesn't necessarily mean that it's a cheap avenue. It just means that you're restricted on your amount of resources and you want to get the biggest value for your buck, essentially. So that's the definition of a budget there, and we'll go into a bit more about that. But linked in with that is this idea of marketing during a recession. And we'll talk about where Australia's at the moment in regards to a possible recession. But the question is, should you continue to invest in video marketing during a recession? Something to ponder, just a little question there. Piggybacking on the back of that, we'll then be looking at where should your resources be placed. If we want to get the biggest ROI for what we're spending in marketing or video marketing to be very specific, where should our resources be placed to get that biggest ROI? And then finally, we'll be looking at 5 tips to be cost effective in your video marketing. So we'll go through 5 different ways that right now you can implement into your own business to be cost effective and get the bang for your buck. So without further ado, good morning once again. My name is Didier Lemire. I'm the founder and director of Fixon Media Group. We're a video production company based here in Melbourne. And this is July's LinkedIn audio event, Video Marketing on a Budget. Good morning, Jared. Good to see you pop in as always. So as we mentioned, this idea of marketing on a budget, it's really important to distinguish between cheap and budget. Cheap means you're going out there and you're wanting to find the cheapest solution to get a job done. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the best solution, but you're just looking at it to be cheap. When we're talking about budget, we're not talking about being cheap. It just means that you've got a restricted amount of resources that you can utilize, and you want to get the biggest value for your dollar from that. That's what it means to be on a budget. Now, that budget could be $10,000, it could be $100,000, it could be millions of dollars, but you're still on a budget. You're still within the limit of $0 to that top range figure, and you got to get the biggest value that you can within that range. So let's have a look at where things are at currently in Australia, because I want to talk a little bit about this idea of marketing during a recession, because it's a thing that is going to start to worry a few businesses coming forward in the next probably 6 to 12 months, because things are getting tougher, and marketing's normally the one thing that we tend to restrict when a recession does arise. And good morning to you, Catherine, as well. Nice to see you jump in this morning too. So currently, as we speak, are Australia in a recession? And the answer is no, we're not. The March quarter saw Australia's GDP rise by only a very small 0.1%. The June quarter stats, they aren't quite available just yet, considering we're only 1 week into July. But you would imagine a very similar number may be presented. However, despite saying that, there's a lot of leading economists suggesting that there's probably still around about a 50% chance of a recession in 2024 in Australia. So that's the state of play. So we're not quite there yet, but it's a flip of a coin as to whether or not we'll see one going forward. So I think it's really just important for us to keep this in the back of our head, that there is this idea that we could be having to restrict our spending going forward. So that's going to restrict our budget, and how can we continue to get the best value for money out of that budget there as well. Good morning to you, Victor, too. Nice to see you jump on this morning. Thank you. So then the question from there is, should you continue to invest in video marketing during a recession? And the short answer to this question is yes, absolutely, 100% you should. But why is this the case? So if we bring this a bit wider, have a bit more of a deeper look into it, one of the key reasons why you want to continue doing video marketing, or just marketing in general, during a recession, is because you're going to be able to increase your brand awareness and your brand visibility. So one of the key reasons for this is because there's a smaller competition in the market. As we briefly touched on just before, marketing is generally the easiest and one of the quickest things to cut as soon as spending is going to be restricted, especially in businesses. So if that budget is already tight as it is, and it's going to be cut even to a lower amount, well, that is going to wipe off a lot of your competition that you're competing against in your market. So for businesses that are going to maintain their current budget of marketing, or maybe for those few that will increase it, perhaps taking advantage of the situation, well, it offers a pretty tremendous opportunity to maintain or even possibly improve your brand awareness and your visibility within your market. And this is purely just because you have less noise out there. Simple as that. The other side of things, you've got that brand awareness and that visibility that you can take advantage of, but you'll also have a chance to solidify your customers' brand loyalty to your business. One of the trends that we see amongst customers when recession hits, and this is more so in B2C as opposed to B2B, but there's still a degree in B2B that we see this, is that during a recession, customers will often go shopping for the cheapest price possible. And that makes sense, especially in the B2C region. Many will see job losses, many will be made redundant, so they're going to have a smaller amount of flow coming in, cash flow coming in for them. Same for businesses, of course, as well. So they're going to want to be reducing their spending as much as possible. So finding that cheapest price out there on the market is a decent way to go about it. But in terms of businesses, obviously this isn't great for us as a business, because if you don't play on price, which hopefully your business doesn't, then you're fighting against customers that want to play on price, but you don't play on price. So continuing to market at your current budget during a recession, despite a recession, allows you to maintain your brand loyalty. Why is this? By continuing to market towards your current customers, you're able to stay front of mind. You're able to keep your relationships strong. And we'll go on to the idea of where your resources should be placed soon. We'll talk about this idea of maintaining your current market share. And this goes back to this loyalty as well. If you continue to just market towards your current customers, you're going to keep that relationship going. You're going to continue to be front of mind. So where originally your customers may have thought about buying from a cheaper competitor, in the absence of your marketing, by continuing to market, you may make your customers slightly reconsider their relationship with your business. And as a result of that, they may choose to stick with you despite the higher price, because you're reminding them constantly about that relationship and that connection that they have with your business. Imagine coming out of a recession with improved brand loyalty. That would be incredibly powerful. So it's something to consider going forward. So throughout the rest of this event this morning, just keep an idea in the back of your head around this possible recession that we could have and how you can continue to market in that way. We'll touch on it here and there throughout, but now that we've said and we've talked about that area, let's just go into the idea of just video marketing on a budget, getting the biggest value possible out of whatever spending budget we have. So where should our resources be placed? This is the most important question that we can be asking ourselves as a business, even when times are at its best. Obviously, it becomes a lot more important when we're in tough financial times, such as during a recession. I'll talk about those 5 tips to be cost effective in just a moment, and both these areas, they kind of overlap. And for me, I believe the best value and the best place to place your resources is going to be through social media for the majority of brands. In terms of social media, the best types of content, they're going to be educational and they're going to be informative based. So let's have a look at marketing in general, and this is obviously very important too during a recession. If we look at marketing, we want to be improving 2 things across the entire board. The first is to maintain or possibly improve our current market share. So we always want to be equal or above. We don't want to go below. And the other is to set our business up for success in the future. And of course, this idea of a recession, set the business up for success post-recession. Always the goal is to improve or maintain and succeed in the long term. So therefore, a lot of it's going to be about using short form content. And we spoke last month about the idea of short and long form content. And we spoke about how short form content can be used as a minor touch point in the sales cycle. So in your marketing, if you're wanting to maintain or you're wanting to improve your market share, well, you're going to have to use a lot of short form content over time to keep you front of mind and keep that relationship strong between your customers and your business. Hundreds, thousands, possibly pieces of short form content, because we want to keep customers in that cycle. We want to keep them in the customer journey. We want to keep educating them. We want to inform them. And the idea about educating and informing customers is that you want to empower them with knowledge, so that if right now they don't want to spend or they're not in a position where they can spend, well, at least you've empowered them with knowledge and they can subconsciously respect you for that. And then when they are ready to spend again, well, it's going to be a pretty straightforward decision. They're going to come back to you and your business. Another way you can go about it on social media is for the sales of the jobs that you do have happening at the moment, create a bit of FOMO around it. Show these jobs are happening. Subconsciously in the mind of customers that aren't willing to spend right now, well, this could become as a bit of an indication that things aren't actually that bad. It's that idea of, if others are spending, maybe I should be spending too. Maybe I'm not actually doing that bad compared to everyone else out there. If other people are doing it, maybe I should be doing it too. So we can play on that subconscious psychology of humans and create a bit of FOMO around what's happening currently and get people to buy that way. So that's another idea. So that's social media. But if we're talking about in the long run, then your website is going to be the way to go. And this is probably the second best place to place your resources in your marketing when you've got a very restricted budget. Creating some longer form pieces on your website. Now, note that we just spoke about short form content as being the idea for social media. Website's definitely the place for those longer form pieces. Think about creating a brand film or some educational films for your website. The idea that the reason behind why we want to put them on our website is purely because of dwell time. So what dwell time is, for those that are unaware of what it is, dwell time is simply defined as the amount of time someone watches a video, so the duration that they spend watching a video. Research has shown that for websites placed on, Research has shown for videos placed on websites, for every 1% increase in dwell time, there is an increase of 1.3% in sales on average. So for every 1% increase in dwell time, there is a 1.3% increase in sales on average. So it goes to show that having the option for people to be browsing your website, then stop, watch a video, watch a film about your business, empower them through that video. For every 1% that you can get them to watch a little bit more, then you've got an increased chance of 1.3% in converting them through a sale. And again, it goes back to that relationship with your brand. Sorry, excuse me. It goes back to that relationship with your brand. If the content is rich within that video, within that film, whether it be short form, whether it be long form, if it is rich in value, then that's going to start build that relationship with your customers. They're going to be feeling empowered, and they're going to relate that empowerment with your business and with your brand. So those are the two places that I recommend allocating resources to when on a budget. So social media and your website. For larger brands, of course, you've got other digital platforms, streaming services, TV could still work depending on the type of brand that you are or type of campaign that you're running. But seeing as we're talking about small and medium-sized businesses within the context of this event, then social media and your website, they're going to be the two best places to place your resources, in my opinion. So let's now look at the 5 tips to be cost effective in your video marketing. So far we've looked at where your resources should be placed. We've talked about why you'd want to continue marketing during a recession or when times get a little bit more tough financially as a business. And we've spoken about this idea of budget doesn't necessarily mean to be cheap. It just means that you have to be smart with your spending within the restrictions of spending that you do have. So with that in mind, what are the 5 tips to be cost effective in your video marketing? So I'm going to go through each of them now for you. Then I'm going to go back and go through each of them in a little bit more depth and detail. So the first one is scale down your production size. Secondly, we've got repurpose content. Third, opt in-house when possible. 4, invest in the long run. And 5th and finally, use the free options that are available to you. So let's go back to that first one. Let's go a little bit deeper. Let's define a little bit more about what scaling down your production size is related to. So scaling down your production size, what this is related to is all about just making things simpler. So as an example, for creating longer form pieces, brand films, educational content that is 5-10 minutes plus in duration. If you're using a production company to produce these, a video production company to produce these, then one way you can go about scaling down that production size is just simply ask them the question of, we've got 5 people coming to this upcoming shoot. Is it possible to reduce it down to 3 people? Or maybe we've got 10, and can we reduce it down to 6? Is that possible? It won't necessarily significantly reduce the quality of the film that's being produced. It will a little bit, but that's only going to be known by you and the production company. Your customers won't know about the alternative that they could have witnessed. But it will reduce the expenses of production. Now, I know myself, if a client came to me and said, this is the film we're wanting to produce, and I came to them and said, all right, this is what we can do for you, this is the resources that are going to be required. If they turned around and said, look, is it possible that we can reduce it by this much, and what would be the impact of that on the overall production? I would be happily able to entertain that for them without any problem. So just simply asking the question is sometimes the easiest thing to do. It can feel tough in the moment, but a lot of people are open to discussions. And so have that conversation. Just see, can we reduce it down in size, the scale of our production? The other side of this is also in relation to your output. So if we're talking about short form pieces as an example, if your business is currently putting out maybe 30 pieces of content a week, well, perhaps maybe you can just bring it back a little bit, shorten it down, and take it back to 20 pieces a week. So scaling back your output is also a great way to continue video marketing, maintain that brand awareness that you have, keep your market share, but you're doing it on a budget. You're reducing your output. You're still putting pieces out there. You're still being proactive in that sense, and that's the way to go about it, of course. But you're just slightly bringing back that output just to make things a little bit simpler and scale down that production size. The second tip that we'll talk about is repurposing content. So repurposing content. We're actually going to do a full 60-minute webinar on this topic next month, but we'll go into a little bit of detail about it here as well. So repurposing is a great way to budget your video marketing. The best way to go about this is just focus on creating 1 or 2 long-form pieces a month. So one example of it could be a podcast, an audio event like this, for example, very similarly linked, or an educational piece for YouTube where you're just speaking for 10-15 minutes about your area of expertise and a certain topic within that area. So from these longer form pieces, you can then create 6 to 10 pieces of short form content from this one long form piece. So the reason this is so effective is because, one, it saves you from coming up with dozens of new ideas all the time. So it's going to reduce your load in terms of thoughts. It's going to keep things centralized. You don't have to allocate your resources across multiple projects. Instead, you can streamline things down 1 or 2 avenues and keep it all very centralized. So myself, I've been doing this for the past probably 8 months with my business, and it's been fantastic for me. I've been doing the audio events here on LinkedIn that'll get converted into a podcast and posted across Spotify, across YouTube. And then from there, 6 to 10 pieces per audio event, and that'll go out across Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook. So it's a really budget-friendly way to put the content out there. You're still educating your audience, and you're still creating those touch points through the short form pieces, but you're continuing to market, and you don't have to allocate resources across a very vast area. So repurposing content is a really good way to go about it. And as I mentioned, we'll do a full 60-minute webinar on this topic next month. The third option is to opt in-house when possible. Now, of course, this is not always going to be possible depending on the size of your business or the expertise that your staff hold within your business. But where it is possible, it's always good to bring content creation and video marketing, or just marketing in general, in-house instead of having to reach out to a production company or a professional marketing company, agency, for assistance. Now, do keep in mind, especially if the expertise of your staff in-house is not on par with those outside, the quality of your output is going to be reduced. So that's definitely one consequence of this idea that you will need to just keep an eye on. But if you're just doing it for short form content, then this isn't really so much of an issue. Short form content, viewers are often aware that the quality is going to be reduced. And that's also one of the reasons why short form content is so popular, because it's not overly produced. It's not feeling like it's a full-on production. People are aware that they're in a different frame of mind when they're watching it. When you're watching long form content, you want everything to be very put together extremely well. But short form, you're happy to just go through each piece one after the other in a frame of mind which is a little bit more open. So having all that extra data to consume of a well-produced film is ideal to not be in that way. If you're looking at producing longer form content, definitely always highly recommend going with a production company for that. Just because, as I mentioned, there is so many more variables at play, a lot more data subconsciously that needs to be communicated through to the viewer, and a lot of the time, your internal team won't be able to do that. But for short form, definitely head inside, use your own team where possible, because there is so much that can be done these days on a phone. There is so much that can be done on entry-level cameras, and they can still get you results, especially when we're talking about short-form content. And as we touched on before, the idea of that short-form content is just to stay front of mind. That's the goal. We're wanting to maintain our visibility and our brand awareness with short-form content. And if you can do that with your phone, if you can do that with an entry-level camera, you can save yourself a little bit of money, and you can allocate that money towards other areas within marketing, then that's probably going to be the better way to go about it. Matt, good morning to you. Welcome. Nice to see you here as well. So then the fourth idea that we'll talk about is investing in the long run. And this is probably a question that should be asked, not just for video marketing, this should be asked across the board for everything. Marketing, operations, sales, branding, the whole lot across business. Everything should be investing in the long run. So the first question that we should be asking, in video marketing specifically, is will we be able to use this piece in a year's time, 3 years' time, 5 years' time? The answer should almost always be yes. 100%. And if we're going to invest in the long run, generally speaking, that's always going to be the most cost-effective option. If you're tight on budget, then creating a new video marketing campaign to support a short-term sale that's happening within your business is probably not going to be the best option. But if you can allocate those resources to creating a brand film or an education piece that is timeless, that can be used again and again, sit on your website, sit on YouTube, it can be there forever, well, that's definitely going to be a much better investment compared to going for a short-term campaign again and again and again and again, which is only going to have a lifespan from the start to the end of that campaign. Likewise, this is going to be similar for short-form content. I'll be creating pieces that we can post again in 6 months' time. Can you repurpose this again and again on an ongoing basis? Timeless pieces are going to be the best pieces. They're going to be the best investment options, and it's going to be where the biggest ROI is going to be. We spoke about before. Budget doesn't mean cheap. It just means you have to be smart with the resources that you do have available and get the biggest bang for buck. So investing in the long run, having timeless pieces that can be used again and again, that is an example of getting the biggest bang for your buck. So finally, the fifth tip to be cost effective with your video marketing is to utilize the free options that you have available to you. There's so much out there these days. And this is very much a great link to that third idea of opting in-house where possible. If you're opting in-house, well, that's going to take a bit more resources of your internal team. So you're going to have to offset that with some free facilities elsewhere. There's so many free video editing softwares available. If you're looking at on your phone, CapCut, that's definitely my go-to for reels and short-form content. I'm pretty sure it's available on both iPhone and Android. But CapCut, that's a great one. So CapCut is actually it's owned by the same company that owns TikTok. So there's a lot of overlapping features, which is great as well. But it's super easy. I use it on a weekly basis, sometimes on a daily basis. If I'm creating short-form content on my phone, instead of having to upload that footage to my computer or to my laptop and edit it on our professional editors there, I can just put it onto my phone, edit it on CapCut, and then I can post it straight onto socials immediately. So it cuts down on so much of that time wasting to have to send stuff everywhere. It can all just be done on the phone. And as we touched on before, short form content, viewers don't need it to be highly produced. They just want to be able to have the information and receive it and move on to the next piece. So if we can cut down on all of that and still create a highly informative piece and do it on our phones, then that's a great idea. For a few more other free options, they're a bit more higher standard. Adobe Premiere Rush, that's a really good option as well. So that's just a scaled down version of the industry standard in Premiere Pro. That's also free. DaVinci Resolve, which is by Blackmagic Design. This is actually a fully professional editing software, but it's free. So you have all the features that the top level editors making films use, and you can access it for free. So Blackmagic have done a really good job of being able to link together the professionals and the prosumers, if you want to call them that, together through one software. So DaVinci Resolve is a great option. And you've got the one that's been around for a long time, iMovie. That's still going very strong, and that's definitely a great free option as well. In terms of other free resources that you can access, well, utilize YouTube, utilize Google, read blog posts, watch YouTube videos, learn those skills to edit and create your videos in-house. Improve the knowledge and the expertise of your team in-house. If you've opted in-house, get them to go onto YouTube, get them to read some blog posts, upskill them in this way, and you're going to see, again, a lot more bang for your buck by doing it that way. Take advantage of podcasts, audio events like this one. webinars, all these free options that are available to you. Take advantage of them, because there's a lot of information that is out there that is being offered to people free of charge. So take advantage of it. Upskill your knowledge and your expertise by going through these events. So that's all for this morning. It's been fantastic to have your company. We'll go through a little bit of a summary about what we spoke about, and then we'll go and have a little bit of a preview towards next month's event as well. So first and foremost, we touched on this idea of video marketing on a budget. Budget doesn't necessarily mean cheap. It just means you have to get the biggest bang for your buck within the limited resources that you have available. Whether that be 10 grand, 100 grand, millions of dollars, a budget is a budget. That's the cap of your spending. And within that cap of spending that you have, you want to be getting the biggest ROI possible. So it's really important to distinguish between cheap and keeping to a budget. We then had a look at this idea of a possible recession. This is coming up for Australia. Should you maintain your marketing during a recession? And we spoke about, in short, definitely. There's a little bit more to that though. It improves your brand awareness due to having less competition in the market, less noise out there. You can possibly improve your brand loyalty by strengthening your relationship with your customers. In terms of where you want to be placing your resources, especially for small and medium-sized businesses, social media is going to be the best place to maintain or improve your market share. And to set yourself up for the future, well, heading to your website and adding a few longer form pieces to your website, that's going to be the best way to do it for setting yourself up for success in the future. And then finally, those 5 tips. Number 1, scale down your production size. And this, of course, relates to the scale of your output as well. Use it from 30 pieces down to 20 pieces. You're still maintaining your brand visibility, your brand awareness. You're continuing to market, but you've slightly pulled back your output size and keeping things going in that way. Tip number 2, repurpose content. Have a few longer form pieces, create some shorter form pieces out of that, and post that across your social media platforms. The third tip, opt in-house where possible, specifically for short form content. If you're doing long form content, definitely keep that with a professional production company, just because of the number of resources required for that and the number of variables that are at play with long form content. Number 4, invest in the long run. If we're on a tight budget, no matter what figure that budget is, we want to be smart with our investments. So jumping from short form to short form piece, jumping from short campaigns and going from one to the next to the next to the next, and creating a new piece of video for each of those is not going to be the best way to go about it. It's going to burn a lot of cash in the short term, and in the long term, we probably won't be able to reuse those pieces again. So a better option, invest in the long run, create pieces that are timeless, that can be used again and again and again in a variety of different contexts, and that's going to be a much better of an investment. And finally, the 5th and final tip to be cost effective with your video marketing, utilize the free services that are available to you. Lots of good video editors out there that are free, a lot of YouTube videos that are highly informal, a lot of blog posts that you can read and upskill your education that way, and plenty of events just like these that you can attend as well. So once again, thank you for listening. It's been fantastic to see Christina, Lorraine, Jared, Matt. There was a few others that popped in as well. Great to have your company this morning. I appreciate you sticking around for pretty much the entirety of the event this morning. As I mentioned, next event is the 13th of August, Tuesday again at 10 a.m. We're going to be looking at that topic of repurposing content. How can you do it for enhanced brand engagement? So we'll dive in on that second tip, repurposing content, in a lot more depth, and that'll be a full 60-minute webinar on the 13th of August next month. It will be held on Zoom, so you will need to sign up for this. So if you do like to register for that, please put your hand up. I will give you early access for that. Otherwise, promotions will begin on Thursday this week in 2 days' time on the 11th. Aside from that, thank you once again for your listening, and looking forward to chatting with you again next month in August. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.